Greetings! Welcome to Terra Prime Live. Today we've got our Last Jedi discussion. We've assembled a little panel of our crew here. I'll do quick introductions here. We've got Ben Judkins with us. We've Jared, our Master Nero, Michael Saber around the interwebs, and Celine, Nightcore, I guess is your handle. But whatever, you know who we are. And you know why we're here. We're here to talk about the new Star Wars movie, Last Jedi. It's been very divisive amongst fans, which is kind of neat. However, I don't know if it's more divisive than Force Awakens. I don't know. Every time one of these movies comes out, it just seems like people fall in on each other. But anyway, so we are going to try to hash out a little bit of it today, see what we thought of it. So I think maybe we'll just start going down the panel, and let's hear what our initial thoughts of it were. Why don't we start with you, Celine? First of all, I'm assuming everybody here has seen it, right? And everybody watching has seen it because spoilers galore. But go ahead. Yes, sorry.
I think my initial impressions are like The Force Awakens was kind of Disney proving that they could do a Star Wars movie versus The Last Jedi was their new, fresh contribution to the whole franchise in a way. Like, yes, we've proven ourselves now, and now we can take it where we want it to go, and I really appreciated the risks they took and the fact that they didn't just give us the classic trilogy with a whole new cast of actors. There were a lot of plot twists and interesting things that we just flat out didn't get, and we certainly didn't get this I guess what I would call a more mature story than what we got in the prequels, for example. So I don't know, it's 2 thumbs up for me.
All right. Michael, what were your impressions of it?
I love the movie. I love it. I wouldn't have said it right after the screening. I was literally shaken, and because all of my expectations they just didn't come true. But the more I think about the movie, and the more I feel back in the different scenes that were so surprising, I really get to love that movie, and I definitely have to see it again, many times.
All right.
So no critics from me here now.
Very good. Okay, Jared, how about you?
I hated it. No, I didn't hate it. I don't really hate very much. It was very interesting. It kept me guessing. It was not predictable. It tried a lot of new things, and I think overall that gets it points in my book. It was definitely a little more adventurous. I thought it was enjoyable. I'm waiting to see it a second time to get a better sense of it. But from my first viewing, I had a very positive feeling about it.
All right. And finally, Ben, how about you?
I like the movie quite a bit. I have seen it a couple of times, and so we can talk a little bit maybe about, how my impression of it changed between the first and the second viewing. But in general, I think that this film took risks. It was sophisticated. I think it's been a pretty valuable corrective for the Star Wars universe and kind of showing what you can actually do with a Star Wars film in terms of, we needed a good movie after the prequel, something that's not just a good Star Wars movie, but is a good movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that this really moved us in that direction.
Yeah. Now we are, of course, probably going to get a little bit on some people's nerves with the prequels. But one thing I'm proud, I'll have to say is that the thing about the prequels and how it's going to relate to this, and I think there's a generational kind of thing as well going on. My wife mentioned something about this as well. But like, you've got a group of Star Wars fans who grew up on the original trilogy, and you've got a group of Star Wars fans who grew up on the prequel trilogy. And you usually see lines drawn in the sand along those lines. The people who are kind of pro prequel and people pro OT. This one seems to be divisive all the way through. I can't really get a bead on who is hating on it more. There is a lot of surprising hate. My initial impressions of the movie, I've only seen it once. We saw it in IMAX. I already put out a little video on my first impressions and stuff like that. I generally liked it. I think it's an enjoyable movie. It doesn't rank very high in the movies as far as my favorites go, but that's just a subjective kind of thing. My problems with it are structural. Where he put things and where things go and how long certain things are. All of that some of that kind of stuff really bugged me the first time through. And I shouldn't say it really bugged me, just it kind of took away a lot of the emotional punch. I didn't have those thrilling moments that I did watching The Force Awakens, even like the third time, where, you know, that movie is all about reveals and it has lots of moments. There's not as many moments in The Last Jedi. We'll get to some of them, and some of them are good, some of them are, well, as we were talking about before we started, some of them are a little infuriating, but we'll get to it. So I don't know, maybe we should get that out of the way. What do we see people reacting to as far as negatively? Because we're all very positive toward the movie. Let's get the negativity out of the way and try to, you know, give some sort of lip service to it, you know, because not everybody liked this movie. The Rotten Tomato score is for fans is very low, considering what it is, while the critic score is very, very high. So I don't know. Does anybody have a thought process on that?
There's a lot of things in this that I guess were inevitably controversial, because it's a little bit more of an adventurous type of. They took more chances in this film, which is always going to have, you know, it's going to be a double-edged sword. So some people like the new directions they send it in, and some people don't. I think the concept that they're putting Star Wars in new directions is universally good because it's encouraging change and keeping it moving forward. But, you know, obviously just me. The main things I see are, universally it seems like people aren't that big on the Rose and Finn sequences. It feels, I mean, those two characters are great. I like them, but the sequences, what the kind of things they're given, it disrupts the pacing. It's kind of ultimately pointless to the story. It's just not all that interesting. I also see a lot of negativity towards Luke, the new direction Luke has gone in. Mm-hmm. I guess that's a big thing now. I don't really understand it. I mean, if anyone else has like a negative opinion about, you know, Luke's direction, feel free to chime in, because I'm actually genuinely curious about what the issue is, because to me it makes perfect sense. It's not like Luke is suddenly like, you know, a dark sider or something like that. You know, he's just kind of an old jaded man, which what happens when, you know, you go through really kind of traumatic stuff in your life, I guess. And then, you know, it makes sense to me as a character arc. So.
Yes, it does. And I think it's probably, and anybody else, if they have an idea, let me know, chime in. But, you know, Mark Hamill's interview where he said this isn't his Luke Skywalker got viral, you know, after everything like that. Now, I don't know if you've seen the whole interview, but to me, what it sounds like he's saying is, it's not my movie. it's Ryan Johnson's movie. I'm not making the decisions.
Yeah.
It didn't sound like he was saying, I hate this Luke Skywalker. Because then, like, later, didn't he? I read an article, too, where he said, after seeing the movie, I see that his decision was right. One of my favorite parts of the movie was Luke Skywalker. In fact, we'll talk about the structure of it. I think there should have been way more Rey, Luke, and Kylo, you know, leading up to the throne room scene, and that should have been beefed up as well. And then all of the spaceships and that kind of stuff minimized just a little bit and flash back to it. I think that would have made a better, tighter movie for me.
Well, I mean, that would be the irony, is that this is Mark Hamill's best live action role ever. This is as good as his acting has ever been. And, you know, it will be remembered as, you know, the time he hated Luke Skywalker, even though he really made Luke Skywalker come alive on that screen. Right?
True.
You know,
And it does go to underscore or maybe bring up the Alfred Hitchcock School of Directing, which is you must treat your actors like cattle. They are there to work for you and to act for you. They do not get input. It's a totally different way of doing it now. But it's true. I mean, he initially had some reservations against the part, yet he acted the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And he also spoke up.
Killed
you know, I mean, he talked to Ryan, you know, about the issues and stuff like that, because I think they had a different direction in the beginning that was probably more extreme. And you know, Mark was like, I don't know how I feel about this, and they hashed it out apparently from what I've read, and they've kind of shaped it together. So it's not entirely what Mark had in mind, but it's also kind of a compromise. Whereas I know Lucas was well known for not having an easy time working with actors. He had a lot of trouble, you know, letting them kind of bring something to the role, especially because some of his writing, he didn't like writing. I've been reading his biography, and you know, I can see where all his future issues come from. But like that's what it reminds me of, is, you know, kind of Lucas having this style where, no, this is what I want. I'm going to make it this way. You're going to do what I say, you know. And this is a little bit more of a collaborative.
Yeah, I don't think that we can talk about the flaws of this film without, you know, addressing the issue of nostalgia, because at this point in time, you know, what the Star Wars franchise seems to have been selling, you know, has been nostalgia. And nostalgia is a dangerous thing because it's about people's emotional memory, what they remember from the past. It's not what actually happened in the past. It's not what they actually thought about it at the time. It's what they remember thinking about it now. And I think that this is why so many people violently object to this Luke Skywalker. Not because this was a bad writing decision to have a conflicted Luke. I mean, everybody's been saying they want a darker Star Wars film. Well, here it is. This is darker. This is what darker actually looks like. But what it did was it contradicted their sense of nostalgia as a kid. This is why they're saying, you know, this destroys my childhood, because, you know, it's their emotional interpretation of their childhood. And, you know, that's the really difficult thing for Disney. On the one hand, you know, you want to keep your audience, but on the other hand, you can't sell nostalgia to a new audience that doesn't have the nostalgia for those things, right? You know, at some point in time, there's got to be a new storyline that you can build nostalgia around as well.
Yeah. The nostalgia part of it is definitely a good angle, and that goes back to what I was talking about with the PT and the OT. You know, you're either nostalgic for the original trilogy, which had a certain feel and everything like that, or the prequel trilogy, which had another total feel. I'm not a fan of the prequel trilogy. They're not fantastically great movies. They're not really good movies. But in all honesty, the Star Wars movies aren't Shakespeare. You know, they're light fare. They're not, you know, like, we tend to bring so much meaning to this because it has so much meaning for us. But we forget that these were intended as children's movies, you know, for kids. And I think there's far more for kids in the prequel trilogy. So kids that grew up with that, probably there. But I don't hear a lot of younger people dissing Last Jedi, right? It's mostly fans like us who seem to be into it. Now, Luke being one thing.
Let me just
Yeah.
Two things for the Luke topic. It is nostalgia is one thing, and expectations are another thing. And me personally, I just before I went into the movie, I had two visions in me for this Luke character. Either he goes the Yoda way, or he goes the Obi-Wan way in teaching Rey. So I never expected such a turn into this illusioned Luke. So that really hit me hard. And I think what Mark Hamill said, and what I've read many times since, the main issue with the Luke character is this moment where he really tempted to slay his nephew. And this is something, it's a crucial point in all of this development. And I think many people don't say, no, my Luke would never have been tempted that way. Never. My Luke, my Return of the Jedi Luke would never have reached a point where he would have been so tempted to slay his own nephew. And I think this is a very central point for the critics, that this is way off everything that is possible or should have been possible for Luke.
Yeah, which of course is naive, but
yeah. Sorry, if I might just jump in there. I mean, going back to the original and in many ways the prequels, I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi faced a similar choice with Anakin. You know, I have to kill someone who I'd consider brother, family, etc. And like at this point in the story, Luke is an old man now. He can't be the same bright, optimistic, hopeful young man that he was in the OT, because he's lived too much. He's been through, he's been through a giant war. He's lost his own father died in his arms. So I mean, he's going to have baggage, and now they very much. In Luke, I saw him kind of become, or somewhat similar to the classic teacher role that you would find like the Paimei character in the Kill Bill series, or Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid. Those are just kind of the parallels I find, like the whole reach out and tickle Rey's hand with grass. It's like, you feel that? You feel a force, then slap upside the head. There's that. He's kind of he's become a product of his own experiences, and people still remember Luke Skywalker of the late 70s, early 80s, and it's kind of, no, he's an old man now. He has to be the mentor, the teacher, and he's going to have some baggage with him.
Yeah, and I think most of the people wanted to see not old Luke. They wanted to see Luke as Obi-Wan, right? They wanted to see him progress to an Obi-Wan stage, where he's the wise master, and they probably envisioned lots of this thing. Now here is where I'm going to come in here, and Michael, this is probably one I want to hear your thing. Why is anybody shocked at Luke's portrayal or any of this stuff with Luke? It was in the trailer. He says the Jedi must end in the trailer. When I heard that, immediately I was like, "Oh, what are they going to do with Luke? He's certainly not going to be Obi-Wan in this one." So, for me, I was really expecting that. I really loved it, and I thought it paid off. I went into the movie wanting that type of Luke, and I got that type of Luke. But but that seemed to be something that they had been kind of promoting the whole time, hadn't they? Or was that just me?
I thought so. I mean, that was obvious.
Yeah, I would agree. They promoted Luke as not being this not totally being this wise sage teacher. He's like, it was very obvious right from the get-go that he's been through hell, and that this like all of this was going to get hashed out, and it was kind of the impetus was going to be on Rey to kind of be like, you know, don't wallow in your failure. I need your help to stop Kylo Ren in the First Order.
Yeah, I think the broad strokes were all there way ahead of time. So I don't know why anyone is surprised. I mean, the only one thing, the detail, like Michael said, with him in that moment of, you know, uncertainty, you know, turning his lightsaber on, you know, and then like deciding ultimately not to kill Ben and take that, you know, easy path. That's the one thing that was, it's obviously a twist, so it's not going to be in the trailer. And that's, I think, one of the things that people really get up in arms about, because, I don't know, I think a lot of people oversimplify that kind of thing. I think it's a very emotional thing, which is very subjective. It's different person to person. They say, oh, Obi-Wan didn't do that because da-da-da-da-da. Like, they're different characters. You know, they've been through different things. Everyone has a different way of reacting. And ultimately, he didn't do it. And that's the point. He was tempted and didn't do it. Just like he's tempted to kill Vader in the end of Return of the Jedi. He's fighting him. He's ready to kill him. It's like, I liken it to the same scene. It's kind of like a callback, almost, in that he's ready to kill Vader. He wants to, more than anything. And, you know, then he kind of regains his Jedi calm and makes the choice consciously not to kill him. So.
Well, Michael, you said you were taken aback by that, and you were kind of shocked by that whole
thing. Yes, I was. Two reasons for that. Reason one, I thought they were misleading us in the trailer. I really did. Like with the scene with Rey and Kylo, where everyone thought, oh, maybe she's going a dark side with him. Or I thought they were misleading us. I thought the quote wasn't finished. That maybe he wanted to say something like, the Jedi must end fighting the war for the galaxy. I don't know. And that was my first reason. And my second thought was maybe he wanted to express that the Jedi were so limited in so many ways, and that he, in his retreat, had found a way to open up to another part of the Force or whatsoever. So, and just to add that, I was kind of taken aback, but I really how can I say that? When I entered the movie, my biggest fear was to see Luke die. I said, oh, please don't let him die, please don't let him die. And I went out of the theater and I was in peace. And that was because he was portrayed the way he was. And I am absolutely at peace with that, because it was so logical, it was emotionally just on point. It was the right thing to do, to let him go that way. But I was surprised because I expected that they were misleading us.
Yeah. They have a what do you call it, a history of red herrings. So we have to be careful about that. So the next bit that probably, like you said, the Finn and the Rose storyline for people is problematic. I think that's kind of structural. I don't necessarily think if they would have broken up, shortened it up a little bit. But let's get this out of the way, because this is an elephant in the room with all of this stuff, and it's a big thing. Is a big thing now. The diversity in the Force, or not the Force Awakens. Well, the Force Awakens and this one, the new Star Wars. There's obviously a push for diversity, right? And of course, that's garnering some things. Does anybody here, and I probably know the answer to this, but does anybody here think that the diversity was over the top, transparent or self-conscious in any way.
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah,
I was aware of it, you know. I mean, I was aware that they were trying to bring some more diversity to it, but they did the same thing in The Force Awakens. I mean, The Force Awakens has characters of all different genders and nationalities and all this kind of stuff, and it was obvious in that, like, okay, they want to, but it's not. I don't know. Oh, it just doesn't seem jarring to me. It doesn't seem like they're casting less talented actors just to get a minority in there, which is, I think, what people claim a lot of times.
Yes.
Where,
and that's the thing.
I don't know, like Rose, I actually really liked Rose, and that's why I kind of feel bad that her arc isn't that great.
Yeah,
because I think she's genuinely pretty
good. I think the diversity thing is, for me, it's obvious, sure, but it's just like they're trying to make other things more realistic, right? Upping the effects, upping all this stuff. Because quite frankly, we don't live in a world. Well, most of us don't live in, monolithic societies anymore. We have lots of people all around us. So when you see something that's like, at least for me, growing up where I have grown up, and in this area and stuff like that, there's lots of diversity around here. So when I see something that doesn't have a lot of diversity, it sticks out like a sore thumb, right? It's like the opposite is true. It's like they really tried hard not to put it, or whatever. So that's how I kind of look at the diversity in it. Obviously, I don't know of any actor that wasn't up to snuff in any of them. I mean, I haven't heard any complaints about anybody.
Yeah. I would almost say, if anything, they used more talent than was needed for some of the characters because of just how small some of the roles were.
Well, right. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier with Holdo and whatever. I mean, or the thief, Do you really need Benicio del Toro for that part? I mean, is that part so important and so difficult that you need somebody of his caliber to do that part, which doesn't even really amount to anything? Might have been wasted.
I think it was.
Well, maybe I cut a lot of that stuff out, actually. I think I heard that like 20 minutes of Canto Bite and, them on the spaceship got cut out. So that may not have been the part he was recruited for, the part they ended up having him in.
Oh, God, can you imagine if there was 20 more minutes of that?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
20 extra minutes worth of stuttering?
Yeah, 20 extra minutes of stuttering in weird casino world.
Yes,
or they could have put, Finn and Rose and Benicio del Toro in a lineup, kind of like they did in The Usual Suspects, and they can have a Star Wars version of that.
That would have been pretty good, actually.
That actually would have been more exciting if they
would have been more fun.
Caught, right? And then, so it's like not just the failure. It's like, because I get the whole failure, right? That failure is important, and I really love that part of the movie.
Theme. It's a good thematic.
Great theme, but make the failure fun. Not just it just didn't work. Like have them get caught and have them go through like a whole bunch of things. If you're gonna have Space Fenster switch on you a whole bunch of times, you have him do it a bunch of times. So you literally are like, wait. Even when he finally does it, you're like, wait, is that for real? Right? That would have been funny.
Yeah.
Even a lineup, like you said, have him in a lineup arguing or something. I don't know. Have BB-8 try some harebrained scheme to get him out. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
And then they have to come crawling back to the Resistance, like, we didn't get it.
I think structurally, like, I don't know, like, because you had, if you think about it, and I know people compare it to like the old movies, and it's hard, you can't, but some of the best parts about, for instance, let's talk about Empire, which everybody, is like a big fan of Empire, I think, generally. Empire has different storylines going on, but it's pretty much just Han and Leia and Luke. And Luke's doing his Jedi training, and Han and Leia are doing their thing trying to escape the Empire. So here you have Luke and Rey, and that kind of connects you to the First Order. And then you have Poe with his beef with the new people in charge. And then you have Finn going off on this other adventure, which kind of like splits you off another in like a third or fourth direction. And it gets too cluttered, I think. And it just gets you jumping back and forth between all these people. And it's like you see in like Phantom Menace when they're jumping between like the Gungan battle, then the fighter battle, then the Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon against Maul, and then they have the Padme going through the palace. Like, it's too much all at once, and it really kind of takes away from some of the other parts. So I think if they had one part with Poe and Finn and Rose like doing something, that would have been a lot better, I think. Because I see a lot of people complaining about the whole like slow motion chase scene through, that creates the ticking time bomb kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like people are like, really? They're just kind of running through space until they run out of gas.
And that's another little thing. Probably one of the only plot holes in that movie is they have to compress all this entire movie happens in an 18-hour period. In less than a day. So, I mean, it's not a long time. And so then you get into sci-fi logistics.
Yeah.
Right. Like, these people are going these ridiculous distances and
because
happening in ways that they can't happen if we're only dealing with 18 hours here.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing because it's also confusing because it's the same thing in Empire where you're never really sure how long Luke trained with Yoda. And it's always like one of those, did he train for weeks? Did he train for like a couple days? I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing with, how long was Rey with Luke really? It seems like she was there a really long time. It shows like she's there, she's following him for probably days or I don't even know how long. And then finally he agrees to teach her. And, it's like, I don't know. How long has it been? How long are they going and getting chased by the First Order?
Yeah. For my money, I would have just started the movie on the island and started it off with Rey and Luke, and then flash later on to the battle and Poe and all of that.
I thought that's what they were going to do.
Right. As it was like I said, these are all structural problems.
Yeah.
The actual scenes, I had no problem. I was enjoying it. I had a big smile on my face. I loved the movie. It was, IMAX, incredible experience. Just loved it.
I think there were also though some structural things that were kind of good. I mean, depending on like how big a structure you want to talk about. One of my favorite things about this film was the intertextual references back to Kurosawa that we kept saying over and over again. Because, this has become a trope in the Star Wars, fandom that, Lucas, made references to Kurosawa's films, was inspired by Kurosawa's films. But here is someone who actually looked at Kurosawa's work, specifically Ran and specifically Rashomon, and came up with, really interesting things that isn't just copying it, and again, isn't just like, kitsch. It's not just a pure bid for nostalgia, but we have this entire Rashomon memory sequence discussion that structures relationships between good guys and bad guys and, the future and the present and the past, and pulls it together in really interesting ways.
Yes.
Right? And in some senses, this is more sophisticated than what Star Wars films have typically tried to do.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Rashomon, because that I think it was a very salient thing for me when they did that whole Rashomon gag. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool. You did not expect to see that in a Star Wars movie. So there's the argument. Is it too smart for Star Wars? I mean, you never know. But the Kurosawa thing, yes. The whole throne room scene with the red background.
Yes.
The Kagemusha thing, the whole visual treatment with Shadow Warrior and that sort of thing. Yeah, I thought that was brilliant, but not everyone's.
Yeah, like all of that stuff is directly out of Ron. If you've never seen the movie Ron, wow, you got to see it, because the Praetorian Guard, from everything from the Praetorian Guard. I mean, you got to see. Isn't it King Lear? Isn't his version of King Lear Ron?
Yeah, it's King Lear.
Yeah. So even there, even Kurosawa is like referencing other things that are now being referenced in other things. It's very cool. But yeah, so Ron is a very good Rashomon and Ron, definitely probably my things. And then, back in the Hidden Fortress, all that stuff. Okay, so the one last thing negative that I think we should talk about before we start gushing about the movie is Phasma. Oh my God. Right? The new Boba Fett. Right? Everybody loved Phasma. She's got the best figure, the best costume, the best everything. And they just have her walk on the set, kill her off, and move on. And it's like, I get it in The Force Awakens. He head faked us in The Force Awakens, making us think that Phasma was the main baddie and then flipping it on us. So okay, that was nice. I liked that because of how Force Awakens happened. But now I need Phasma. God damn it. Right? Come on!
Yeah, they make it seem like she has this they kind of pair her off with Finn as like a, nemesis, but they don't really have much of she has no character that you can really understand why she would be, other than the fact that she takes professional responsibility for Finn's defection. It's like, why should I care? Finn's just like, oh yeah, Phasma, you're my old boss.
Right.
And she's like, oh,
why don't we have the Trinity, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we have Kylo, Hux, and Phasma? That just seems like they were setting that up.
She doesn't do anything. She doesn't even show up in the rest of the movie. It's not like,
I know.
You show her walking around and ordering around storms. I don't know. I mean, I just wanted her to do. I mean, Gwendolyn Christie's a solid actress. She really can. I mean, she's good as Brienne Tarth. She has mixed writing in Game of Thrones, but she does a good job with it. And then they hired her behind the mask, and they just kind of let her give her these generic lines, and then they kill her off. So I don't know. Maybe she'll come back. Maybe she will, because supposedly her armor is, some very, very fancy material or something like that. That's super amazing, which is why she's
if they do it, they're going to have to do it really, really well, because I don't want to bring her back for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
I mean, we want a character out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like they could have given her one. There was plenty of opportunity for her to be even just reacting in the background to Kylo beating up Hux.
Yeah.
Or have her on the bridge while that whole Poe and Hux gag is going on.
Yeah.
Right? And have her kind of being disgusted with Hux, or I don't know. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
that was like the low point for the film for me when she died. I was like, no, come on. That movie almost lost me right there.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any like specific gripes? I mean, I think everybody has.
I have a specific gripe.
Uh-oh.
So the low point of the movie for me was, how they started the Finn and Rose story arc. That they went back to the idea of Finn as a defector again. And I'm like, wait a second, I thought we cleared this up in the last movie, that this was like the big arc progression, of Finn accepting that he's a member of this and he's, this is what he is. And then we just hit reset on him and we started over again. And well, that's one of the reasons why he can't have a compelling story arc. If you keep resetting this guy from zero, I thought that actually, kind of really demoted him into the level of secondary character, not just the pointless story arc that they put him on. And I agree, the stuff in the casino was kind of pointless. And why were there no Twi'leks in the casino? I thought if we went to Star Wars Vegas, we'd see lots of Twi'leks, but whatever. But just the way they started that, it did not sit well with me at all.
I also didn't like the aborted Finn self-sacrifice at the end. Personally, I thought that would have been a really powerful moment because, character-wise, because the whole Finn being part of something bigger and, defecting and joining this thing that you can really get behind. You know, it shows his total devotion to this cause. You know, he's going to give his life to destroy this thing, so you know his rebel friends can be safe. You know, and then they womp womp like.
Yeah,
I thought that was a little.
Yeah, they kind of cut him off.
Yeah, and it's there for like, and then they have this little like kind of side romance arc, which would be nice, but it's just kind of thrown in there, and it's. I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and they sort of. I mean, I have to see it again because I can't.
Can I answer the question with a terrible pun? It's a shame Snoke had to split halfway through the movie.
Yeah, well,
that was. I think that is also an interesting point about the movie that people have mixed reactions on because it's so out of left field
and unceremonious. It's just like
dead. It's not.
Bye.
It's not dramatic. It's not Vader throwing the Emperor in the end over the. You know, it just happens, and you're like, did that just happen?
There's only one thing that I would have changed about that scene. Do not show the lightsaber turning.
Yeah,
that's it. If you do not show that scene becomes way more powerful. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But as soon as you see it, I mean, it kind of takes the surprise out.
Yeah, I felt like what they were trying to do is they were trying to double fake you out. Like they were making it seem like he was going to do it, so you're like, oh no, he's not going to do it. That's going to be the twist. But then he does it, so it's like a double deception kind of thing, which is like I don't know. I think it'd be better if you didn't see the saber moving. I agree.
Yeah.
But it's it's a little over the top. Like his lines in that are a little. When Snoke's like, "Oh, you're gonna like strike down your true enemy," and I'm like,
"This is the thing too." Another thing that I'm surprised that people were surprised at.
Yeah.
Snoke is obviously a red herring. He was obviously a red herring in the Force Awakens.
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought it was a really great character decision. So that, and then having him strike down Snoke, having that whole fight, and then having him still be a dick is great, because he's like, you know what, I'm out. I'm not going to be held back by these like, these old ways. I'm just going to do what I want, and what I want is to take over this friggin'. And he's just unleashed upon, the galaxy. He goes out and chokes Hux, and it's great. It's a really cool character arc, and he's fantastic in it, and he does a great job. I was really a fan of that overall, even if it was a little bit like, but ultimately, the only issue I have with this and The Force Awakens to an extent is that I feel that they rely a little too heavily on the outside material to explain their stories. Because every time I ask a question, I notice online, there's very polarizing viewpoints. There's people that are diehard, this movie's perfect, nothing about it is wrong. And then there's people that are like, this movie's the worst thing that's ever been created. I got, cancer from watching this movie, and there's those extreme views. So when I say, as someone who enjoyed it, when I say, well, I didn't feel like this was well done, people are like, well, no, that's explained in this book, I'm like, oh, well, Phasma, that's pretty disappointing, right? And they're like, oh, but they wrote a book about her. It's like called Phasma, and she's all about. I'm like, but it's a movie. I shouldn't have to read a book to make me, understand what's going on in this character in the movie. It's a movie.
I don't want a book on Phasma. I want a movie with Phasma.
Yeah, it's like the whole video game thing now, where it's like, oh, great, I bought this video game. It's like, no, you bought half the video game. The other half you have to pay another $50 for to unlock. It's like, no.
Yeah, on somewhat of that note, that's the one thing about the Battlefront 2 campaign that drives me nuts, is I don't know Iden Versio as well as somebody who read that damned book, which I have very little interest in reading.
I mean, it's cool that they're making, believe me, I am all about, I love the old EU books. So I'm all about them making new content outside of the movies. That's great. But don't rely on it. Don't start to lean on it. Fill in the gaps in the movie. It should be a self-contained thing. And you don't need to know everything about every character. You don't have to know where Phasma came from and what her real name is and, what her parents were like. Who cares? But give her a character. Don't just say, yeah, there's his character, but come back and buy the book and you'll know exactly what she's all about. Yeah. I don't care. It's like the same thing with Snoke. I think we don't need to know where Snoke comes from. If they give the briefest explanation of Snoke is some, dark side, whatever, I don't care. But what I do care about with Snoke is his relationship with Kylo Ren, because he was the start of all this. Snoke turned Kylo Ren, which was what caused Luke to have that moment of hesitation and set this whole path in motion. But how was Kylo Ren connected? How was Ben Solo connected with Snoke? How does he know him?
Well, that's the thing, and I don't think that has to do with Snoke. That has to do with Kylo.
Exactly. I think it's important for Ben. I don't think
anybody's interested in a Snoke story that does not involve Kylo.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Who cares?
I don't care. Explain it in the, you didn't know anything about Palpatine in Return of the Jedi, but you had a sense of, well, okay, Vader was, turned via this or whatever, right? And it just made sense. But here you're working specifically on a character. Kylo Ren's almost like the protagonist in the movie at this point, because they delve so much into his characterization, try to explain his motivations and why, he's like this. And then I think an important part of that is knowing how Snoke was able to influence him. You know what I mean? It's an important character thing, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think that they should have. I'm very on board with Rian Johnson's decision not to go into it in this movie, because what's important is you need to see the bond being fostered between Rey and Kylo, right? I like the fact that, we can transition here to positive now talk, but like the whole Rey Kylo thing is just brilliant to me. It threw away all of your expectations. It did exactly what I wanted to do. I remember after The Force Awakens, everybody's saying, oh, she's a Kenobi. Oh, she's a Skywalker. And I'm like, oh, God, I hope not. I hope not everybody is related in this stupid universe. This is supposed to be a galaxy of people, right? So the fact that it's Kylo reveals to her that she's nobody, that she was just abandoned by a couple of drunk junkers. Awesome. Was he lying to her? I don't think so. I think that we are meant to believe that that's the case, because Kylo says to her, "Should I tell you, or have you always really known?" And she starts crying. Right? She knows deep in the back of her head, there's some part of her that goes, they're nobody. You wish they were somebody, but nobody's coming to pick you up. Nobody's going to rescue you. Nobody's anything like that. And that's the great thing. There is one thing about the whole Star Wars thing, which is just so crazy, which is, everybody has to have a connection with everybody else. There is no new blood that is being interjected through the story. It's like one family that's going through all of this, and the droids even belong to the heroes the whole damn time. It's like, really, and it gets so heavy with like all this stuff. So now that we can start with a blank slate, it's a great foil. It's a great contrast. You've got Kylo, who is a Skywalker, who comes from a large past, so he's got a lot of baggage. He's got a lot to live up to. Right? And here comes Rey. She doesn't know what's going on. She's got some talent. She doesn't come from anything, but she doesn't have anybody to show her what's going on. So it's a cool character dichotomy. I wish they would have focused on it more, because the scenes between her and Kylo were great. The fact that they were, talking to each other. Although one must wonder if Kylo could read Rey's mind and Snoke could read Kylo's mind, how did he not figure out where Luke was? That's my only question with that particular.
And Rey could always see more of Kylo than Kylo could of him.
That's true.
My sense is that Snoke was always too clever by half. Snoke thought that he was playing everybody when in fact, he didn't fully understand quite how this Force connection that he bridged worked. And yeah, his evil apprentice may have been playing him a little bit too. So, Your Snoke theory sucks, right? There we go. Not really the big bad you thought he was.
Yes, which I loved immensely. You know, anybody disappointed in Rey's lack of lineage?
No, I personally thought it was brilliant because it was almost because there were so many conspiracy theories, and I'm pretty sure the Disney execs, the storyboarding team, everybody knew. Oh, everyone's going to say, "Oh, who's Rey related to? Where does she come from?" And of course, Kenobi's, Skywalker, Luke's daughter, etc., ad nauseum. And that was kind of the best part about that scene, is it wasn't just Adam Driver saying it to Daisy Ridley. It was, he was saying it to the entire audience. Rey's parents are nobody. They don't matter. Big things, very, and important people, and people who will change the world, come from nowhere, from the most humble of humble beginnings. Which is kind of, in a way, kind of the point of Star Wars. And, potentially anyone can change the world. You don't have to have this big, long bloodline of super powerful Force users. You don't have to be related to Space Jesus.
It's just that everybody this is one of the problems with the that I have with the EU a lot of times, and another friend of mine has too, is that they always have to give these characters some like important backstory with the main storyline. It's just like, look, I'm sure people have their own lives. Where are the schlubs that are going to work every day and like slinging bantha milk? Somebody's got to do that, right? Everybody in that cantina can't be a revolutionary or a legendary smuggler. Most of them should be common criminals, right? Like a pickpocket, or some guy who's just a drunk.
And even like the main characters that we talk about that have become legends. Han Solo was just a dick that was waiting in the cantina. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't a. I mean, he had this one thing he was bragging about, that he made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and he's like, oh yeah. And you could tell it was him thinking a lot of himself and not an actual, because you don't hear it from anyone else. You just see him getting chased around by Greedo and these low life people. You never hear anyone else saying, Han Solo, oh, you met Han Solo. Like, he's not a legend. He's just a random guy that they picked up, that they, was seedy enough that they could pay him off to smuggle him off world.
Yep.
Which I love, Makes him cool that way.
Exactly, yes. And so all these people that are so disappointed with it that she wasn't.
I loved it. I loved it so much. I was saying it since I walked out of The Force Awakens. And God, the more I heard theories, the more I wanted it to be absolutely no one. I wanted it to be just randos, like, oh, well, yeah, your mom was this person. All right.
Yeah, Ray, your dad is Bob from Bob's Bantha Burgers.
Yeah, exactly. Just the most mundane heritage.
But not even. They're worthless. They're drunks. They abandoned they sold their child for a drink.
Yeah. Which is it just works. It works so incredibly well. And I was hoping for that since The Force Awakens came out. I said, oh man, like, yeah, it'd be cool if she was Luke's daughter or something like that, or if they found a way to work that in. But it'd be great if she was just some rando, I mean, and they did it. They were ballsy enough to do that. Which Rian Johnson, I'll give you props again. You got a pair on you.
Yeah, but, I would have hated it if she would have been related to somebody. I can't. Unless she was like related to Boba Fett.
No, yeah, she was related to somebody really random. Like, oh, she's the that would have been pretty fun.
Boba Fett crawled out of that Sarlacc pit and just decided to settle on Tatooine.
Yeah, look, I've had enough. This is a bounty hunting thing. This is crap.
Sarlacc is where I draw the line.
Yeah. I've seen some shit in there. Like yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we can start the hype train now. I think we've gone on quite a. I'll start us off if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, well, we kind of started it anyway, but what Celine was talking about with when Kylo Ren explains to her like, oh yeah, you know, your parents were nobodies, they were nothing. That revelation, I was really, really, really curious how they were going to give it, because that's one of those things that you can really clumsily deliver by exposition, or you can work it into your movie flawlessly like they did. It's delivered as a character moment between Kylo Ren and Rey in a very, very tense situation between the two of them after they go through that fight scene, and Rey thinks, yes, he's coming back. I've brought him back. He's going to be on my side. And then Kylo Ren's like, no, let's just abandon all these people and just do our own thing, you know? And you can see them. You can see the visible split between them. And then, you know, when he drops it on her, it's not just, hey, audience, this is what her origins are. It's well done. It's in the script as a character moment of him saying, listen, you're nobody. And he goes on to say, you know, no one cares about you. No one's concerned about, you know, what you're going to do. He said, but I do. I care. You know, and it's a great, like, they bond throughout the movie, and that's the moment where you realize, like, there's a bond there, and, you know, you want to see where it goes. And he says it, and you see her react to it, and it's just, I think it's just flawlessly done, personally.
It's the new generation's "I am your father" moment.
Yeah,
Except
exactly.
No
The
family
opposite.
relation.
Yeah. Really well done.
Yeah, except the thing with the "I am the father" moment, that came out of the blue, right? Nobody had any idea that they were going to make Luke Skywalker Darth Vader's son, right? Like, nobody. Because, and you know what? I'll remember, even when I was a kid and I first saw The Empire Strikes Back, the first reaction to him being the father was like, really? In this galaxy full of people? Just happened to be flying over his abandoned, you know, his estranged son, who has been hiding on this know-nothing planet for 19 years, and he just happens to lose the Death Star stuff right there. It just, you know, that seemed a little, you know. And then you have to have the Obi-Wan moment where he goes, you know, oh yes, well, I told you that it was true from a certain point of view, and then, you know, it's like, oh, that was really unglamorous way of you know, no finesse there. But I think this was, you know, like I said, it was done very well. The only problem I have with all of that is that we take long breaks from that, and that's the most compelling part of the movie to me. Especially, you know, and it comes to the point where they're, you know, everybody's getting on the Falcon, right? And they see each other one last time before she flies off. I wish they would have ended the movie right there. I wish it would just went to credits, right? I thought that would have been amazing. They didn't, but whatever. But yeah, it relates in with the Luke thing too, because Snoke dies and Luke dies, you know, and Rey kind of convinces Luke to sacrifice himself in you know, the scene where he projects himself there. Yeah, I mean that particular storyline, the whole thing between Kylo and Rey, I think is definitely the linchpin of the whole series, I think, or this trilogy, you know, as it were.
Can I also bring up some of the gags in the movie? Because, like, some of the humor in the movie that they would just randomly inject was stellar. Like at first Rey's training with her staff, and then she picks up the lightsaber, and it's like this really big moment. You know, she's taking on this role of the Jedi, and Luke's standing there, and he's watching, and then all of a sudden she lops the rock off, and you're just like, oh, that's the end of the scene, and then crash, and the caretaker's wheelbarrow gets crushed, and they're both standing there just like,
that was great.
That new girl again.
Yeah. So the poor characters, like, the look on their faces is just like, she's like,
some of it was okay.
Good. Some of it's jarring, but, you know,
some of it did not work for me. Some of it was like, wah, wah, you know, like you wanted to hear, you know, or see somebody,
Yeah, I did like the Luke Skywalker gets the lightsaber, throws it over his shoulder, and walks off. I know some people weren't as fond of that because it's kind of, but I really like. Cause it was also like it wasn't just funny. It wasn't like just a gag. It was actually like just a complete like this is what's happening now. Like it's a twist of you expect this moment where he's like, oh man, this is my lightsaber. This is a very powerful moment, and he's like, no, nope, not having this. And he just marches off, and she's like. And then the porgs are like bouncing on the lightsaber, and you're like, "Oh, they're gonna destroy themselves." It's great.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like the joke that starts off the whole movie, is fun.
Yeah, I'm holding for General Hux.
Okay, I'm sorry. The only thing that I was thinking of during that scene was, do they have customer service in Star Wars universe?
Yeah, it was a little. It was funny, but it was
the universe, like totally, like it's just like it was funny, but like, am I in the wrong movie? Or
like it should have been like a commercial or something, like a commercial with like the characters, like that's what it should have been, like, oh, this is fun, that's kind of a funny way to do it, and it was funny. It was the comedic timing was good, but in the context of, especially because personally I don't take Hux very seriously. I've never been able to connect with Hux. He just seems.
He's a toady. I like him. Toady.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like that Kylo Ren is
punched.
Yeah, but like I think I would like Hux to be like more of this, kind of a more serious character that gets undermined by Kylo Ren, who's kind of this young asshole who's just running around, causing trouble, and Hux is just kind of like there to clean it up, and he's like, "Come on, man!" But he's just so like. Such a little Weasley guy. No, like pun intended with the whole like Weasley.
I thought it was pretty consistent with The Force Awakens.
Yeah, no, it was. I've never been that fond of his character. Then they had that scene where it's like kind of you're supposed to not take his character seriously. And I'm like, just keep undermining him, like I'm just gonna respect him less and less, like he just doesn't have the presence, I guess that's the intent. Maybe like if that's the intent, that's.
Yeah, no, I think that is the intent. That's what I got out of it, and I actually enjoy that about the character. The fact that he's,
I like him getting choked later. That was pretty entertaining. Yeah. Because finally,
I think there's an interesting point you can make about the way the humor is written. I was listening to one of my colleagues in political science named Dan Dresner talking about this film on the 1A, which is like an NPR show. So, love to hear political scientists talking about Star Wars always. And I believe he was he was the person on the panel who made the point that, look, in the rest of the series, Star Wars has always had jokes. It's always been funny. But it's generally written up the fourth wall, in that, Han is trying to make Leia laugh. Han is trying to make Luke laugh. He doesn't know there's an audience.
Yeah.
He doesn't know he's trying to make an audience laugh. Whereas here, this was, in most parts, and I think some of the jokes that didn't work, there was no audience inside the scene for the joke. The only audience was the one in the theater. Where there was an audience actually on screen for the joke, the humor tended to work better, right?
I would agree with that. I mean, I've only seen it once, but that definitely does jive with how I'm thinking about it. Like I liked the Finn scene where he gets up out of stasis, right? And BB-8 says, "What does he say? Finn naked."
Finn naked leaking or something.
Yeah, leaky bag or something like that. Yeah. He's like, "What?"
He's like, "Are you okay, buddy? Like, what are you doing?"
And then he looks up and you see that was fun. Yeah. That was a cool moment like that. But yeah, like what you said, the nuns, some of those moments worked, I think, better than others. The Rock was funny.
I think the part where she shoots through the wall, that worked okay, just because that's your introduction to them. And all of a sudden, they're there trying to like clean up the mess, and Luke's like, "Yeah, they're the birthday. That's their job. You're just kind of screwing up their life.
Right.
But yeah, there's a few weird kind of moments.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do appreciate that this movie took a lot of tropes, a lot of not just from Star Wars but from sci-fi, and purposefully kind of trashed them and went the other way. That was very nice. So like we already talked about the expectations for people, but there's also the expectations for Snoke, all of this. They really kind of like threw this out, and I think that's a good thing because they're using fresh stuff. A movie which I did not like that everybody really loved was the new Blade Runner, and one of my problems with that movie is, for me, I've watched a lot of sci-fi in my days. That movie seemed like just one sci-fi cliche strung into another one, all the way through, all the way to a spoiler to the other replicants saying we're starting a revolution, and I was like, oh god, it's like a bad Outer Limits now. So I really did not like that Blade Runner at all. Everybody else loved it. I will not watch that movie again. This movie did exactly the opposite of what Blade Runner did for me. There were expectations, and it just tossed them out back and forth. And
I don't think I've ever seen a Star Wars movie that was able to present such a unified theme, which was like, if you want to use arc words to describe it, I would say, when Kylo Ren says "Let the past die," that sums up the movie. And it's not just not just one character. It's not just one character's specific arc. As they do, it's everyone together. It sums up everyone's specific journeys. It's like you said, like failure is one of the big themes, and like letting go of past things. It's both a meta and like an in-universe thematic bridge. It's like we're saying, okay, let's be able to move beyond these things. Luke is awesome. He had his story. Let's give these new characters room to breathe. And that kind of thing. And it's just great. It's great that everyone can exhibit that and they can pull it all together like really neatly, I think, by the end, with everyone kind of just reaching the end of their arcs in this movie. Luke coming full circle, kind of, returning to his kind of what people expected, I guess, kind of being able to pull himself out of that depressive state. And, I think there's a lot to connect to.
all right, so to finish up here, before we go, we got to talk about one thing, obviously, that we should all be talking about, which is the fight, the lightsaber fight in the throne room. For my money, this is the best lightsaber fight in the entire series. It is the best choreographed. It has the most drama, the most tension for even, all of them. I'm not a big fan of the original trilogy's fights as far as fights go. Like, I like The Empire Strikes Back because there's far more plot and character being delivered during it, so it's not a waste. But like, even when I was a kid, I was way into Zorro movies and stuff like that. So Errol Flynn, and then when Ben Kenobi and Darth Vader start poking at each other with sticks, I was like, what?
Yeah,
so,
it's why they had Bob Anderson jump in during, Empire,
right,
because they wanted to take it, they wanted to be able to take it to a new level and, see where they could go with it. So that's cool. I mean, I like that fight too. That's still one of maybe my favorite. I think it's better choreographed than Jedi, but I think Jedi has a lot going on in it. Like you said, story and character wise. So those two fights, it's hard to separate.
The Empire Strikes Back one, you mean?
What? Yeah, the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. They have these two fights. Empire's a better fight, but Jedi still ranks really high with me just because of the emotional investment in it. You can see the characters in the way they interact with each other in the fight. So
I think the complaint a lot of people had for Jedi, which is of course coming up again and again and again, which is, it's just a rehash. And Jedi was Return of the Jedi was a little bit of a rehash.
It was. You know,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I did think this fight was incredible. Very well choreographed. Very different. The fact that they're
Yes.
fighting. Suddenly, I mean, it's funny because people joke that, like, you know, there was almost no lightsaber on lightsaber contact in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like that's a trope of Star Wars. Every movie you have to have a lightsaber battle at the end. You have to have a lightsaber battle here. You have to have it. Like this one, there was almost no lightsaber battle. You know, you had like the throne room fight, and then you had Kylo versus Luke at the end. Spoilers, obviously. And Luke just dodged. You know, it was brilliant because it was just showed that Luke was so far beyond him that it's, you know.
Well, the real reason he was dodging is because he wasn't really there.
Exactly. But I'm pretty sure he does come into contact with his blade a few times. But it's hardly, you know. But it also showed the character. It was good.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of funny that the throne room is a big fight.
It's really interesting. You know, to start with the fight in the throne room, it's so different, you know, from our point of view, from a TPLA point of view, because if you've ever wondered, gee, what would Sicho look like? This is it. Now you've got real Sicho. You've got, you know, multiple good guys. You've got multiple bad guys. We are rushing forward. We are clearing obstructions and moving forward, and clearing obstructions and moving forward. And you get that, you know, funny stochastic kind of movement and flavor that Sicho can have. So I love the battle in the throne room from a kind of a technical TPLA perspective, because now when people say, gee, what would Sicho look like, and what does a fight look like against, you know, other melee weapons, you know, other than lightsabers, this is it. This is, I think, a fantastic view of the, you know, kind of the beginnings of lightsaber combat, right? What is the most basic version of lightsaber combat? Where does it come from? You know, and then you can get philosophical. You can say, okay, here's Form Zero.
I would say, as far as that goes, I would say the Force Awakens final fight is far more Sicho than this fight. There's now here's the thing. I think this is the best fight of the whole series. I do not think this is the most realistic fight of the whole series. There's a couple of times in there where it's done for looks, right? Because like the first bit, you need the iconic thing of them together fighting all these guys, right? But if you know how to deal with multiple opponents, you know that is exactly what you do not want to do, is to stand in the middle of a whole bunch of people who will then...
The whole back-to-back thing, yeah. That's a good
now,
visual, but...
that's what you need for the story, right? Because they're back-to-back, they're outnumbered and everything like that. So, really want to talk about technical, you know, that kind of thing. Number one problem with that fight is they're standing in the middle of everybody and they're not trying to get to the outside. And then they kind of break up into their own things. This is why I always look at movie fights differently than actual fights. Movie fights are not meant to look real, and they're not meant to impart that kind of stuff. And I think the new fights, The Force Awakens was a great one. It was simple. It was stripped down. That's why I say like the Sicho kind of thing if you're going against one person. With this, I wouldn't. There's such a hodgepodge of stuff going on there because you have all these different weapons and you have the multiple things. You have all these cool things where she drops the saber into her other hand and then cuts it. And, you know, it was, you know, where I'm coming from in the fight, why I think it's the best one is because, number one, it delivered character through action, which is not something you see in Western movies a lot. It's something you see in Hong Kong movies all the time. And that's where the whole styles thing got all popular, because that was a really convenient way of expressing character traits in characters, is giving them a particular style kung fu that they could fight in, and that could be visually recognizable. You don't see that in most westernized fights. It's just two guys going at it. This one, he had to show their alliance growing. He had to show them like building trust with each other. Right? They as they were fighting, they were outnumbered. They're, you know, all this other stuff. They relied on each other. They rescued each other multiple times. You know, as well as fighting fighting for their own lives.
She throws in the lightsaber and everything like that. Like that's a, you know, it's a good moment. It's
Yeah.
visually cool, but it's also, you know.
Yeah, it was an exciting. Yeah, and you're on the edge of your seat.
Yeah.
You know,
and it fits like perfectly within their own character paths, because there's, you know, Rey, who has this naivety about, you know, Kylo having this potential for enormous potential for good, and, you know, she just without a thought, oh yeah, I'll throw my weapon, right? You would never do that if you were suspicious of this person, you know, because it's like, oh, this guy might, you know, I'm disarming myself, and this guy's gonna have two lightsabers. But, you know, she just does it without a second thought because she believes, you know, that he's changed. And then the twist is that, you know, he's really still kind of a dick, you know, which is great. You know, it's a double twist. You know, it's like, oh, he's with Rey, he's teaming up with Rey. That's amazing. Oh my God, he's going to be turning back to the light and blah blah blah. But he's like, no, I don't really care about the light side. I just kind of want to be my own person. So.
But see, and I didn't think it was a twist at the end. I knew that he wasn't going to turn back. What I thought was the point there, and what I got away from it, was that just because you team up to fight for your lives, does not mean that person is your ally.
Exactly. I love that. And I love that in movies. I love that trope, the enemy mine trope, where two people that are not necessarily allies can fight together against. I love that. That's always appealed to me. You know, this whole, like, you know, idea that a villain and a hero can fight together because of some common enemy. You know, it's kind of cool. So I like that. That was good. And then it wasn't so much as a twist, but it was a nice character moment that they kept consistency. You know, he didn't just go, oh yeah, I'm gonna be good now. Absolutely. He still had this anger. He still had this you know, inability to like quench these feelings inside of him, and kind of really surrender, like she was hoping he would, which I thought was really, really brilliant and fit really well. It's hard to write a character very consistently, I think, and I have respect when people can pull that off.
Yeah.
You know, that's something I also really enjoyed, was the fact that it's like, no, I'm not suddenly turned back to the light now. It's, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. You know, from the very start, he planned on doing or finishing what Vader started, and now he's very much his own character, because he's done, in many ways, he's done the thing that Vader couldn't pull off. He killed, you know, his master in many ways, and both of them to a certain extent. But I think also it's just I don't know, going back to like the actual fights. I mean, like, yeah, I suppose, like, I do like some realistic, and the kind of the stripped down version, as Master Anonymous was saying about the Force Awakens fight. Whereas obviously there are some things they did in the Last Jedi fight scene that were very much done for cinema that aren't realistic, but no, it was really well done, really choreographed, and it didn't have that just obnoxious level of flash that the prequels had, which I was really happy about. And like, honestly, the only thing that bugged me about the Last Jedi fight scene was how many times Kylo Ren had his tip in the floor. Like, real sword people don't put the tip of their sword in the floor, but it's a lightsaber, so it doesn't matter. You're not going to dull the tip of your sword. Honestly, that's the only thing that bugged me.
Yeah, well, yeah. Now back to the thing with Kylo turning, right? The other thing that's really important in that scene is it was it was a good resolution, because, and I don't want to say perfect, but it was a good resolution because throughout the thing, they are both trusting each other. They both got this bond and everything like that, but they haven't even addressed each other's core goals, right? They assume the other one is going to join them, both of them, right? Kylo assumes she's going to screw these people. He lied to you. You know, Luke's a no good you know, asshole, join me. All these guys, none of them care about you, right? None of them know what you're going through, right? And then she's like, assuming that after this thing, oh, you're gonna come back to the light with me. You're gonna join back up, you know, and you know, this whole thing is gonna be very reminiscent of Wonder Woman at the end when she kills who she thinks is Ares and nothing stops. You know, so that I think is a really good thematic thing. And like you said, Jared, it's organic. It's consistent through there. It's not, you're not pulling something out of a hat after an obligatory fight scene. You know, oh, now we're good. Now we're teammates. You know.
Yeah, as much as I think part of us, you know, wanted to see that from a you know, certain point of view, like it just works so much better like this. And the fact that it gives him room to, now that he's in control, he has free reign, like he can show what his true nature is, you know, and I think it's really pretty cool to see that. Yeah, I think I'm really excited to see. There's so much potential for like moving forward. I think that I think it was really good for setting that up.
Absolutely, you know, and I think just the new weapons, the possibility of the new weapons. I saw this with Darth Alice, and I remember when the lightsaber broke, when the Graflex broke in half.
Oh yeah.
He leaned into me and said, "Who's going to be the first one to make that?" I think we know who that will be. It's probably already done.
Yeah. I want a broken Graflex.
Yeah.
I want to see what she builds in place of it. It's really going to fascinate me.
Yeah, maybe she'll put something in that stick.
Yeah, maybe. I'm really curious to see. It opens up so much. It literally just, I mean, it discards the past so much that it actually gets rid of the original lightsaber. It's like, all right, that's not your weapon. That was somebody else's. Get rid of it. And I like that. That was good. It was a good thematic moment, and the Graflex had its time. As much as, you know, I mean, Luke at the end, sad moment, like, obviously, but it was also like a perfect moment. It was the best possible way he could have had his story end, you know, and it's just, it worked. So, I don't know. That's just what I
agree
on it. But, you know, I don't know. It's really impressed me in terms of, like, you know, Kylo Ren has become possibly my favorite Star Wars character. And,
he's up there.
And he's definitely, he's just a little more compelling. A lot of people don't like him because of, you know, kind of how immature he is, but I think we can all kind of identify with that. You know, we can all identify with, maybe not to that degree, but frustration, you know, with the expectations that are laid upon you, and, you know, trying to be your own person, you know, in a world where, you know, parents' influence and, you know, role models and all these things are putting pressure. You know, I think we can all identify with that. And Adam Driver brings a lot to the role. He does an incredible job, I think. And that's most of what it is, I think. Honestly, it is his performance. He and Mark Hamill in this movie are just unbelievable.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, thematically, I think the fight was good. Placement-wise, it might have been a little early. You know, like maybe not wrap that story up right there. You know, again, my structural, you know, things with it, but oh well. All right. Final thoughts. Go. Who wants to start with some final thoughts here before we end the stream?
Well, given how controversial this movie has been, I think it's only appropriate that one of the big themes that it deals with is, you know, the juxtaposition between the reality of history and legends, and when you need to know what really happened and when you really need a good legend, and that there's no easy answer to that. Sometimes you need to know, and sometimes you need a legend. And so, you know, again, for me, in some ways, this film is very smart. This film is very self-aware about what it's doing in a good way. And, you know, as someone who like spends a lot of time writing biographies of, you know, martial arts masters, where martial artists in their styles do not always appreciate a biography of their master, I could relate to this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that is the thing. I also like to piggyback on that just a little bit, and then we'll move on to maybe Jared or whoever wants to go next. In The Force Awakens, you know, Han has that whole, it's true, all of it, you know, to where, you know, the grizzled skeptic basically comes to the realization that, oh my God, this stuff, some of this stuff is real. My goodness. And then that kind of taints him, you know, pushes him over that way. Whereas the opposite with Luke. Luke finds out that, oh, look at that. Han was right about this all being BS. You know, and then he arrives at that stage. So throw that in there. All right, final thoughts, anybody?
I guess I'll just end with kind of going back to my thought at the beginning. I like that the new cast, the new generation, and the new films are going their own way. It's not a retelling of those same stories with younger actors. It's in many ways it is kind of, Star Wars needs to move on. It needs to grow and evolve, and in many ways, Disney took it over, and everyone's thinking, and now with buying 20th Century Fox, they're like, yes, you know, like non-Lucas special editioned original trilogy, but at the same time, Disney's at the helm of this now, and this needs to evolve. It needs to move forward, and the big part of this movie is Disney and the new Lucasfilm saying, don't, you know, let the past die. The OT is the OT, and now we're going to go a different direction because this story, this new group of actors, and these new characters need to have their own lives. So, you know, don't get hung up on your expectations and and nostalgia, as we kind of talked about earlier. So, go risks.
One thing that I think should be pointed out and clarified is that Disney's involvement in this whole, in the Star Wars at this point now, they don't really have much say in the content of what's going on. That's all Lucasfilm Story Group now. They have the, you know, the distribution and all of that kind of thing. So when the theaters were getting told that they had to show this for a certain number of weeks in their prime theater, that was Disney coming in and saying, haha, you know, we have to take over your theater now. So, but it's, I just think that should be pointed out that like the story stuff that happens in the thing is all run through Story Group, which is Kathleen Kennedy, Pablo Hidalgo, a few other people, right?
Yeah, I think there's a few more people. Now that it's important to mention them, I've forgotten their names, but there are a couple of other. There's a couple of other people on the Storyboard Group. But if you go back through the Star Wars show, the YouTube channel, and the actual playlist of the Star Wars show, they have interviews with all of them and what each their role is with the storyboard or the story group.
So the point is that it's not you. Rian Johnson didn't. You know, they're not surprised at any of this. It all went through them. I mean, this is all, you know, they obviously don't have the next movie planned or exactly where that's going to go because it's not written yet. But when they do, it's going to be run through Story Group. And that's the problem with the Han Solo movie is the Story Group said, oh, this is turning into a farce. And they put the kibosh on it. But yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there that as you know, the Disney thing, the Disney tentacles going further and further and further, it's getting harder to to tell what is what, you know, nowadays. Anyway, Jared, any final thoughts before we end for the evening?
I feel like I've hijacked this discussion quite a bit, so I apologize if I got chatty. But I mean, I think I made my opinions known. I still think it's hard to say without kind of some perspective of seeing it again and kind of feeling how it fares as a movie. I tend to be impressed early on with movies, just from the whole sitting in a theater and new things being thrown at you. So I couldn't feel confident enough to give it a real solid rating. But I will say I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot of parts in it. I think a lot of parts were very exceptionally well done, which no matter what, I think elevates it to a point where even if I start seeing the flaws as time goes on, I don't think it's going to compromise those kind of elements.
No, and I think that's probably a good thing to end on too. If you take nothing away from this movie is beautifully done. It's probably the most, from a filmmaker standpoint, satisfying Star Wars movie. It's really well shot, effects, that everything like that. And I'll throw this in here with to add some controversy to it. Didn't like the Yoda puppet, but we're on there. Anyway,
that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. We should just
have a show on that.
Yoda puppet.
It's a Yoda puppet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll bring my original Empire Strikes Back Yoda puppet toy.
Yes.
Anyway, but yeah, it's a wonderful movie from a filmmaking standpoint. Kurosawa, all of that, just really makes it a very rich viewing experience. I saw it in IMAX. If you can't see it in IMAX, it's really good in IMAX. Anyway, so we are at the end here. We will cut it off short. We could probably talk about this all night, but obviously we have lives and stomachs to feed in some cases. So I see Michael dropped out a while ago. It's very late for him. We thank him for being on. Thank you to the panel, Ben, Jared, and Celine, for discussing this monumental event on the air. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back to our regular programming pretty soon. It's coming down to the New Year's, so Christmas is in a couple of days. So if you celebrate, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Have a good holiday season. We will see you hopefully before the new year. If not, Happy New Year. Other than that, have a great day. Happy sabering.